Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
In the studio with us today from Chicago, Illinois, this gentleman has an interesting story. We tried to get him on a while back, and then due to unforeseen circumstances between our production office and his production office, we finally made this happen. Mike Zabrin is on the show. Welcome.
Good to be here. I'm excited.
Same here. You know, you're one of these guys that has actually found some success in spite of everything that's gone on, because let's just kind of go back to what you are. You're the owner of Funktastic Productions, and you have really used this COVID era to expand your digital presence. Let's back up even a little more, and let's talk about Funktastic Productions and what it is, because I think it goes beyond custom weddings and event bands type production.
Yeah. So I'm an entrepreneur, musician, teacher, and very recently podcaster. And it starts really after music school. I started touring with bands specifically on the blues scene while I was working as a barista in a coffee shop.
Wow.
And at that same time, I was working on my own original music, which features Norwood Fisher from Fishbone, members of Kool The Gang. And so when that album first came out, it was entitled Funktastic. And I was in almost every bass magazine. I was in so many music blogs, and I was taught by good friends connected to these big bands on how to get good press as an artist. And then I had to start a band because it was a studio project. I started a band and we played original music, and it wasn't profitable from the beginning. And so I took on several management roles overseeing about 3 different music schools, teaching and managing. I couldn't take it anymore. It was driving me nuts. And so we winded up going into the wedding and corporate events scene, and we now have what I think is the best band and entertainment company around.
That's a field of entertainment that we overlook. Now, I am one of those guys that, back when I was playing in what we called casual bands or garage bands or weekend bands, we'd play the high school dance on a Friday night, and then Saturday we'd go out and we'd play the weddings and maybe a class reunion or an open house somewhere. But it has really become way beyond that now. It has really become an event in itself. And when we talk about the wedding band, we're no longer talking about that Adam Sandler wedding singer movie. This is really a big undertaking, and it's a project upon itself, I would assume.
Yeah, and a lot of these members who play in our band have personal connections to the music that we're covering, and so it's very personal for them. There are members whose grandfathers are the original members of the Temptations. There's somebody related to soul singers like Anita Baker. So they're paying tribute not only to where they come from, also their family heritage too. And one of the big things about us is that because we started as an original music band, we don't read sheet music when we're on stage. It's about the vibe together and how you incorporate this friendship that we've built over the years through music,
So are you saying it's more than just a dance band, that you're actually putting on a show to entertain the folks at a level that you really wouldn't see with the typical dance band?
You wouldn't see it anywhere. Even when we do your standard wedding band songs, even like, Uptown Funk, right? You hear that at every wedding. We go into James Brown, Give Me Some More, into, I think, like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song, into, so many different other songs that make us right? Compared to just if we were staring at the sheet music reading Uptown Funk. It's kind of like, I always compare it to just going to have a conversation, getting coffee with a friend versus somebody you've only met a few times. That conversation is going to be different. And the conversation we have, everybody being friends, is what we call the vibe on stage together. And so it was really kind of a natural fit going into the wedding and event scene, because even when we played original music, we always played cover songs really, really, really well. And so it was just a really natural fit for us.
Let's talk about the band for a minute, because obviously you have quite a bit of legacy within your ranks there. And you're not focusing on just one style, one genre of music, because you do Motown or soul, funk, jazz, hip hop, the whole spectrum of musical genre. Putting these musicians together, how was that undertaking? I mean, to me, it sounds like you have a very deep pool of talent and a lot of experience and professionalism to draw from. How easy or how difficult was that to put together in the beginning?
It was something that I didn't think about in the beginning. It was something like, we just had a really small band at the beginning. And then what happened was I just kept meeting new friends, whether it was at bars or venues. And the bigger and bigger and bigger our band, we started with a small band. It was a 5-piece band. Now it's up to 12 people, you know? And so one of the things that has really kept our musicians playing with us for so many years is channeling their creativity off the stage too. So not only are these musicians playing with us on stage, but they're also involved in a deeper level with the business side of things. And that really goes a long way. You know, I've found from working at all these other jobs that I've had over the years, working for somebody else is only going to last for so long compared to growing with somebody. And that just goes back to how we were able to meet so many great musicians. They would come into our band and they would act, and they would feel a part of it, you know? They would feel like family to us. And so it was a lot of mingling at bars. It was friends of friends, but all of the people winded up being good friends of all of ours. So
I want to talk about how COVID has affected what you guys do, because, you know, in most states, large gatherings and weddings would be considered a large gathering, or corporate events. That obviously affects the bottom line, and you're talking about 12 people. But what you said earlier is that each of the members look at this as a business. That is something that we constantly talk about on this show, and that is obviously, it's the title of the show, The Business Side of Music, because there is that business perspective, there's that business asset that a lot of people overlook. Was this something that you went to each person in the band and say, hey, I need you to look at it from this perspective, or did they bring that to the table, or was it a commingling of both?
It was a little bit of both, and I'll back up to the COVID part of everything. When COVID happened, you know, Chicago was one of those first cities to just lock down, right? And it was frustrating because a lot of other cities, like couples were moving their weddings out of Chicago into more open states, and they came to me. And the reason they came to me is because I'm one person and I have only so many ideas, right? And so as far as expanding the group, putting new music in the band, the way we're communicating with couples and clients, they came to me because they, being the creative people that they are, they have so many ideas and so many things they want to work with us on. And when starting a business, just because something isn't profitable right away, most musicians will quit because they realize if they don't invest in themselves, the industry definitely won't invest in them. And so these musicians were very special as far as, like, even at the times where we weren't making a lot of money, they were still in it with me the entire way through. And even now, like, we're on a task management board, and these musicians, they always suggest ideas through their typing to me, and I really, really value their opinions because I really value them as people and their talents. So it's definitely more than just me.
And I was going to say, with 12 artists in the band, and I'm assuming 12 is counting yourself, including yourself.
Right.
That's a lot of input. Is there a governing board that determines ultimately this is a great idea, this is a bad idea, we're going to table this for later or forget about it? How does that protocol work? Because I would think with 12 people, that's 12 different ideas.
You're very right. Yeah, we have a set music director, and she's really a partner with me in the company. She's also one of the lead vocalists. Her name's Alicia Monique. Another vocalist, Amber Renee, helps us out a lot. And that's really as far as the business side of things. But as far as everybody else chiming in, my Facebook chat goes off 10 million times a day. And I love it. I mean, especially at a time where we can't see everybody in person all the time now. You'd be surprised, even if it's a matter of business, just hearing from somebody is really great. There are times where we get together for a live stream and nobody gets paid anything, right? And yes, that decision goes through 12 people. And so we really learn to work as a team together and value everybody's opinion, even when we don't agree. And they also understand that, yes, by running a business, there are so many expenses that we're putting out there. A lot of the money that I made from teaching is money that I put away and later invested into things that we need, like liability insurance, wedding site subscriptions, I think we're on like 5 top tier wedding sites, a CRM. So, I always ask the question, and this goes along to your point too, did you build a job for yourself or do you have a company? Because if nobody can do what you're doing, then you created a job for yourself. You don't have a company.
We're going to take a break, get a word in for one of our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with Mike Zabrin, who is the owner of Funktastic Productions.
Hey everybody, this is Heidi Newfield, and you are listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
As a musician, you have a dream, that vision of what success looks like for you. Though it's not only about the money, money is part of it. Whether you've been extremely successful or you're just striving to maintain a regular cash flow, you need a plan. Money Concepts can help you develop a customized plan to achieve the financial stability and success you want. For over 40 years, Money Concepts has been providing holistic financial planning services to individuals, families, and business owners. As an independent firm, Money Concepts and their associates are committed to always represent the best interest of the client. It's really about a committed, benevolent interest in them personally. This independence, coupled with that committed, benevolent interest, means they represent you, the client, not a product supplier. It's not about selling products, it's about helping you achieve success. To learn how this can benefit you, contact my buddy, John Adams, with Money Concepts at 737-867-9309. That's 737-867-9309. You can also email John at jadams@moneyconcepts.com.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rule Book, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
You're listening to the Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio today from Chicago, Illinois, is Mike Sabrin joining us. COVID. Now, you're a wedding band. You got 12 people. This is literally your bread and butter, is being a wedding band or a corporate band. It's live entertainment. This isn't just some guy who's a DJ hauling around, music, whether it's CDs or vinyl or digital. And if it doesn't happen, you can maybe find something else to do. This is 12 people. This is an army that you have to keep afloat. How have you guys been doing this during this whole pandemic?
Right. So at first I was looking at different ways that I could pay people just through the pandemic, no matter what. But of course, with, everybody being independent contractors, they were all left on their own. And really, it's 13 people because our sound engineer. And one thing I've noticed about a lot of wedding bands is that the sound system these guys bring out is just trashed. And they think that nobody will know the difference whether you mic everything properly on stage or not. And the sound equipment is sometimes owned by the bands themselves, which can be pretty cheap. And so anyway, we bring out a 15-passenger van with all the seats ripped out, just of sound gear. And so now that we're doing a wedding for 50 people or less, and we've got this ginormous band, this ginormous sound gear, we really wanted to keep everybody working as much as possible and giving the clients the same feeling as when they heard our big band, whether at a showcase or live. So one of the things that we did is we did a rotating 4-piece band, because the 12-piece band also counted as part of the 50-person guest limit that the wedding.
You wouldn't have even thought of that.
Right, me neither. Yeah. So what we did is we would do one set with 4 people, and we would have another 2 people waiting outside of the venue in the parking lot. So when we took a set break, the vocalist and the trumpet player ran out, and the other vocalist and maybe like a saxophone player came in. So it would be like this very perfectly timed swap, and it winded up being like really, really cool. And in fact, we just added in to what we offer doing this, but in rotating quartets. So like for the jazz hour, we'll do our whole band rotating in quartets because it was such a cool vibe. But by doing it this way, we were still able to employ our musicians, and we were still able to give the clients the same band that they fell in love with too. So
I love that. And I remember that years ago, I worked for a corporate production company in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And one of our groups, one of our artists that we had on the roster was exactly that. They would go out, and it would be this, I don't know, 12, 14-piece big band, if you want to call it that. And they would do, the Sentimental Journeys and the String of Pearls and the Moonlight Serenades, kind of that old big band, Benny Goodman, Tommy Dorsey, Glenn Miller. And then all of a sudden, it was just like somebody flipped a switch, and they became this dance group, and, with backup singers and a rhythm section. And that impressed so many people. We kept this band busy year round, year in, year out, and really started getting some top dollar for them.
Wow. Yeah. If you can make people dance and walk away with just out of an event, their feet hurt because they've been dancing all night long. And, and part of that too, I'm assuming it with that band is like, it's not, hey, look at the band. It's, hey, look what we made happen. Too many working bands are focused on the band and not about, hey, do you see all these people dancing? Do you see what's going on? Do you see these people smiling? Do you see these people walking away with their feet hurting? We made that happen, And so that's the mindset we have.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something. You're there to entertain. And we've had this conversation before. It doesn't matter whether you're playing for 50 people at a custom wedding event or you are playing in front of 10,000 people. A lot of times we forget that the dynamic there is to entertain. And if you don't pull that off successfully, you can have a very short career.
That's right. A lot of bands, if you go to their website, it's big pictures of the band. We have a couple of those, but for the most part, you don't see the band in some of these pictures. You just see guests in the back of our heads, just entertaining the guests and just saying, hey, do you see this experience? You can have this experience too at your wedding. It's funny, I was touring with the blues musician for a long time, but it was so much more than blues. And at the same time, I was playing in a great wedding band, and I loved it. And this was when I was in college in music school. And when the wedding band would call me, I would cancel the weekend out of town with the blues band because the pay was the same,
Yeah. And you get to crawl in your own bed at night.
Yeah. I know. And in fact, I was in this wedding band for 4 years, and my original band, as I said, always did covers really well. And when we started doing weddings, we got some really great award from Wedding Wire. And I posted it on Facebook and I said, hey, look at this award that our wedding band got. And the wedding band that I was playing for, that I loved playing in, called me up and fired me on the phone.
Oh, ouch.
I was so mad, and I just felt like I had to tell this story to just kind of let you know how important, what really fuels me in the wedding band industry. You know, I was so mad that he saw me as he saw me as competition, really. And at the time I didn't understand it, because all the musicians that I was always around my entire life just play in so many different bands. And so I said, really, I'm fired because my own band is doing well? Hold my beer and watch this shit. And then now we have close to 100 upcoming weddings on the calendar. And he lit a fire under me. And that resulted in tons and tons of hard work to get the best company that I possibly could. And I feel like that's what every musician, I know you've probably felt it a million times, but I mean, I feel like, you know, that's what every musician needs, is just somebody to light a fire under you and to take action.
Wait a minute. I want to back up. You have 100 dates on the calendar?
Close to it.
With COVID going on?
Close to it, yeah. Well, you know, a lot of people, they also, number one, the future is just, it's so, there's so much optimism in the future right now. It's amazing. And we're going to have an amazing summer. A lot of it, too, is that because nobody was working, a lot of couples it was fun for them to plan their wedding, especially when there's, you know, they don't have to worry about work maybe, or they have a few days off extra because of COVID. And so here's what I'll say is that every musician should get into a wedding band. Now is the perfect time, because weddings and corporate events are the only types of events that grow with inflation. These venues that are opening up right now, do you think they're going to raise the pay for musicians? You know? And I see musicians talking on Facebook like, oh, you know, we're going to come back stronger than ever. We're going to get paid more than ever before, to the same venues that they're hoping opens back up again. You know, when these venues have been investing their entire life savings into keeping this place open in the first place. Right, just to keep the electricity on. Right. Yeah. No, I get it. In fact, I read an article a few weeks ago. I follow a lot of stagehands and road managers, production managers, because for all the years that I toured. And the question that was being asked in a survey in this article was, are you going to go back out on the road when things open back up? Well, part of what separates basically what you do and the touring end of things is you have to get all 50 states to open up. You have to get all of Canada to open up. You have to get the whole world to open up before you can start putting a tour together. Because it doesn't make sense to book a date in Nashville and then book a date in Chicago and then book a date in New York and LA, because you can't make money. You got to fill in those blanks, you know, between here and there. And a lot of these road dogs, as I call them, they've said, you know, I've got a steady gig now. I stay home. I sleep in my own bed every night. And, you know, I've got a 401k and I've got health insurance, things I've never had before. And so these musicians need to take into consideration that the world, and I'm not being a naysayer by any stretch of the imagination. I want to see things get back to normal. But it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take some time. We've been talking to booking agents and concert promoters over the last few weeks, and they've all said that, you know, for the big venues to open, it's going to be a bit premature. They've still got to get this. They've got to get this under control enough to where, you know, you can get, as one guy put it, you can get the herd into a room and not worry about having a spike in the pandemic. So you're right. You've got to get these musicians' mindset wrapped around that you're going to have to work harder than ever to get this boat floating again, because everybody's had to take not one or two steps back. We've had to take, you know, leaps and bounds backwards to get this thing to get floating again. Are you seeing that? I am, and I do think that there are sides of the revenue for musicians that have more so shifted rather than drop altogether. There's this really great company called Bandzoogle. They're a website platform for musicians. They have about 55 1,000 members on there. And they just came out with an article that said the musicians have made collectively $5 million since the start of the pandemic. And a lot of it is through merch and MP3 downloads, T-shirts, and so in some ways I think that this is a really good opportunity for musicians to open up another revenue stream for them, and that way when touring comes back, these other revenue streams won't go away. There's a really great company called Printful that they just integrated with that. You don't have to buy a ton of merch. It just does it per order. It makes the merch for you per order.
By piece.
Right. So things like that, fan subscriptions, things like Patreon, and so I think that this is a really great time for musicians to also start focusing on other sources of revenue so that when venues do come back, they're making even more money,
Yeah. We just have to have a different mindset.
Totally.
We're going to take another break, get another word in for one of our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with Mike Zabrin with Funktastic Productions.
Hey guys, this is Danny Myrick, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, music is all around us, and it affects our everyday lives, whether it's background music influencing our shopping habits in a store, organ music adding the vibe to a baseball game, or a playlist convincing us to keep going on that last mile of a run. I'm Mindy Peterson, host of the podcast Enhanced Life with Music, where we take a holistic look at music's benefits through the lens of science and medicine, entertainment, and business. You can find me and Enhance Life with Music at mpetersonmusic.com/podcast or wherever you get your audio.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio, Mike Zabrin is with us from Chicago, Illinois. I'm impressed with a few things here. First of all, you're a man of many hats. You're a band leader. You basically have your own company with what you're doing here. You're also a podcaster. Let's talk about that for a minute. I always like to hear what fellow podcasters are doing.
Oh, awesome. So I very recently started a podcast in 2021. And
what, were you bored or something? You needed something else to do?
There's
not enough podcasts out there?
Oh, my God. I think Apple just came out with there's about 2 million podcasters out there.
Yeah, I believe it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. And so mostly I never got the business education in music school. I got my business education tuning in, and I'm not just saying this, tuning into guys like Bob Bender and other industry podcasts where I learned the music, the business side of music. And so what I wanted to do is a podcast for all creative entrepreneurs and focus on creative topics where, more specifically the business side, where I could learn and ask the questions that I want to ask. So it was almost selfish reasons, because for creatives, there's not one clear path set out for you as a creative. And the music industry, let's face it, the music industry doesn't want you in it, right? So this podcast is really about combining your talent with business so that your industry cannot deny you and has no choice but to open its doors for you. And I started with Party Slate. They're an amazing inspirational platform for events, Wedding Pro, The Knot, and outside of music as well, different tech companies. And so I really want to help now that I'm learning a lot too. What's been happening is it's also been helping a lot of entrepreneurs help monetize their passion, whatever it may be, into some sort of full-time gig or however far they want to take it,
And I think there's a lot more opportunities these days, especially when we talk about the pandemic. Everybody's had to slow down and take that breath, catch a moment here, take a moment to be able to be creative and figure out how to monetize it. Now, here's another conversation we've had in the past on the show. Left brain versus right brain. The one side is very creative. The other side is very analytical, very business-minded. And very rarely do those two sides of the brain communicate with each other at the same time in a creative person's head. So, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but you're either one or you're the other. And I think a lot of artists and a lot of musicians forget that. There is that business aspect. So I like what you're doing. I like what you're talking about, and then it really comes down to motivating the creatives with conversation. And I think we all have to have this dialogue. In NASCAR, they call it co-opetition. So you're competing against each other, but you really, when you're going 200 miles an hour at Talladega Speedway, bumper to bumper, you have to kind of work with each other too, or otherwise you're going to have what they call the big one, which is everybody's going to crash into each other. We need to take that same mindset and use that in this music business.
Definitely. I didn't like in music school how learning business was optional, and what happens is a lot of guys come out of music school, or a lot of guys go into wanting a professional career in music, and they either wind up paying somebody to do the business side for them who really doesn't understand, who really can't speak in their voice, in their personal brand, But I personally learned a lot too from, I was a general manager at a music school franchise, and I was great. I was a young guy. I was right out of college, and I learned a lot about sales, delegating, community outreach. And I left because I just could not accept the fact that I was altering my perspective on what makes a great musician based on the sole fact that they were paying teachers pretty darn close to minimum wage.
Right.
And therefore, it affected the musicians that I can hire to fill the role of a teacher. There were still amazing teachers there. They were friends of mine, and they had my back just as they know I always had their back. But I just couldn't defend it day to day anymore, and that goes along to, musicians knowing their worth and learning the business side of music by listening to guys like you, and so that they're not taken advantage of. Or I know you probably got plenty of stories of that, but
well, I think it goes back to partly of what you said. You can go to business school. You can go to a music business school. And we have them all over the nation. Berkeley and Belmont and UCLA are just some examples. But until you get into the trenches, and I'm the perfect example. I went to the University of Hard Knocks more than once. And until you apply these things in real life on stage, you don't necessarily know all of the ramifications or the perils and pitfalls that go with it. And sometimes you just got to get in the trenches and do it.
That's true. I'll never forget when we were in the studio with the horn section of Kool The Gang, and they said, "Hey, can you send me over a songwriter's agreement?" And I was like, "Oh,
quick, let me Google that."
Yeah, right. Exactly. So things like that is what I feel like that every musician could benefit from. And, even when I was teaching students too, and here's another thing is that the confidence that we as musicians learn performing on stage, being able to transpire that to every aspect of your life too, more than just business. I always told my students when I was teaching, I said, I know a lot of you guys will never, ever, ever have a professional career in music. Like, it's just a proven fact. You won't. But if you want to be a lead guitar player, or you want to be a bass player, you want to be a drummer in this band, I'm going to show you how to have the confidence that will last you for your entire life, no matter what you do.
Excellent advice. How can people find you?
Yeah, there you go. They could go to www.funktasticproductions.com. Or if they want to check out the podcast, it's funktasticchats.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Bob. I had a great time.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.